I have thoughts about the Cup Series return to the Brickyard between officiating errors, tempers, opinions, and those overtime restarts. Let's chat about it. Hey everyone, my name is Taylor Kitchen and welcome back to Above the Line, the show where we do motorsports media your way, talking about NASCAR literally all the time. And today we're talking about the Brickyard 400. And the end of this race was shaping up to be a banger. It was all right up until the end when fuel saving was definitely coming into play. Brad Keselowski out in front, practically out of fuel, but was leading the race coming to a few laps to go. Ryan Blaney was right behind, still low on fuel, but had enough to eventually potentially make a charge on the number 6. And then right behind them was Kyle Larson, who had more than enough fuel to make it to the end of the race, slowly making his way towards that first position. All of this excitement ended when there was a late race caution with Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Between Sonoma, Nashville, and Gateway, just to name a few, the end of these races for Kyle Busch have not gone according to plan. Nevertheless, this means that we have an overtime restart, and this is where things go quite sour in my opinion. So overtime 1. Before we even go green, Brad Keselowski runs out of fuel coming to the start-finish line. He ducks over to pit road, and Ryan Blaney is pissed. And I would say rightfully so. If Brad Keselowski would have gone to pit road before they reached that point, then he would have been the control car. He would have chosen the bottom of the track to restart on, which is the preferred lane. He shared over his radio that this kind of gave Kyle Larson the win, calling him the golden boy, because he wasn't able to choose his preferred lane as the driver, who would have then started in that first position if Brad was able to make it to pit road or would have gone to pit road before he actually did. Ryan Blaney said after the race that NASCAR should have halted the restart, redone the choose, and then gone back green, which admittedly would have been a very last-minute call regardless. But when you choose your spot, you kind of make your bed. So unfortunately, Ryan Blaney was stuck where he was stuck. So that mess was with the overtime number 1, but it doesn't end there. Once they went green, there was a massive wreck going into turn 1. John Hunter Nemechek made a very late block on Daniel Hemrick, stacking up multiple cars. Alex Bowman involved, Denny Hamlin involved, and Chase Briscoe all involved in this incident because of that block. Luckily, all drivers were okay. That was a massive hit for John Hunter Nemechek, who ultimately had a fantastic race. He led 16 laps. He also got stage points during the day as well in stage 2, so unfortunate end to the day for him. But as these restarts keep happening, as the laps wind down, especially in an overtime restart and with a track like Indy, where track position is everything, they're going to get chaotic. So unfortunate for all of those drivers. With that, though, the red flag came out before we headed into overtime number 2. And this is the overtime where I lose my marbles, for a lack of better word, and probably for using the best words I can use without swearing. But Larson is counted as the leader for this overtime. He got a great launch while Ryan Blaney fell back to the 3rd position. Then with 2 to go, Ryan Preece went nose first into the safer barrier on the backstretch. He was stopped. He could not get going. At this point, you would have thought that NASCAR would have called the caution, not just for the nose first impact into the safer barrier, but because he wasn't able to get going on track. It was well over 30 seconds we were waiting for Ryan Preece to get going, and he was not able to. So you would have thought the caution would have come out. Well, it didn't. NASCAR did not call a caution, to all of our surprise. NASCAR kept the race going green. The field got 1 to go, and that is when NASCAR then pulled out the caution as the field was approaching where Ryan Preece was on the track. At that point, Kyle Larson was in front of the field, winning the Brickyard 400, his 3rd crown jewel in his career, the 2nd crown jewel for Hendrick Motorsports this year after William Byron won the Daytona 500. And this win now gives Kyle Larson the regular season points lead, 10 points over Chase Elliott, but Tyler Reddick, who finished this race in the 2nd position, is only 5 points behind Chase Elliott in 3rd. So it's going to be a tight battle for the regular season championship as we wind down the regular season. But back to this call, I don't agree with it at all. I think NASCAR made the absolute wrong call not throwing the caution. I know it would have thrown us into a 3rd overtime that would have been frustrating, exhausting, and annoying. But when you have a driver make that heavy of an impact into the safer barrier on the backstretch and is not able to get going, you throw the caution. And my frustration stems from the fact that we've seen cautions thrown for this and less in the past, and it's for some reason, this was not a caution, and I just think that is totally wrong. A bad way to end the return to the Brickyard. My frustration with this race does not end there, but we're going to move into our top 10, and the top 10 for this race is really an ode to track position, playing out with great strategy, fuel save, and of course, the chaos at the end of this race. You already know the top 3, Larson, Reddick, Blaney. 4th place, we have Christopher Bell. Fifth, we have Bubba Wallace, and coming into this race, he was minus 27 below that cutoff line. Leaving this race, he's only minus 7. That is due to great strategy calls by Booty Barker, but also kind of due to the misfortune of Ross Chastain and Chris Buescher, who were also around that cutoff line. Chris Buescher is still above the cutoff line by 17 points. Ross Chastain is above only plus 7, so Bubba Wallace making up great ground as he heads into the Olympic break. Something to be thankful for, but also maybe dwell on a little bit. But also, if you look at the races coming up for Bubba Wallace, Richmond, Michigan, Daytona, Darlington, those are the remaining tracks in the regular season, and they are all fantastic for that 23 team. So he has a chance to not only maybe win a race, but point his way into the playoffs if things continue to go south for Ross Chastain and or Chris Buescher. In 6th, we had Todd Gilliland. 7th, Austin Cindric. 8th, Daniel Suarez. This is his first top 10 since Iowa. 9th, we have Noah Gragson. And 10th, Chase Elliott, and his race came with some controversy of its own. A great comeback from an early penalty for a blend line violation after one of his first pit stops during the race. Brad Keselowski was also called for the same penalty a few laps later, and both drivers were very frustrated, saying, hey, NASCAR gave us a note Saturday morning saying this is what we could and couldn't do. Brad Keselowski was like, hey, I'm either really bad at reading or NASCAR's bad at officiating because I did exactly what they said we could do, and I still got a penalty. What NASCAR said they could do was this. They said cars returning to the track must use the acceleration lane through the exit of turn 2, telling drivers they could swing beyond the white lines in the acceleration lane between turns 1 and 2. The confusion there was what counted as the acceleration lane, what counted as being back on track. Overall, this meant that the drivers could not put their tires above that third white line coming out of pit lane because that would be considered to be on track. Wasn't totally clear to drivers like Elliott and Keselowski, and they were penalized for it. So a setback for those drivers at the beginning. Ultimately, they did come back from that. Brad Keselowski, though, unfortunately, fuel was the end to that comeback. But nevertheless, they did okay. Other honorable mentions for this race, Joey Logano and Jimmy Johnson did not finish this race, but counted with a position of 34th and 33rd. Logano overall had a really good run going, same with Jimmy Johnson, and unfortunately, though, on a restart, it looked like Carson Hocevar just tried to make things go 3 wide with Ryan Blaney on the outside and then Austin Dillon on the inside. They were going into turn 1 squeezed, and then Hocevar got into Blaney, kind of setting up a chain reaction where Blaney got into then Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson turned up into Joey Logano, and their day was done. During an interview at the Infield Care Center, Joey Logano shared that he was frustrated with Carson Hocevar, saying he shouldn't have been stuffing his car 3 wide going into turn 1, saying it was something that he just tends to do. And unfortunately for Jimmy Johnson, his bad luck in the Gen 7 car continues. Of all of his starts he's made so far in this Gen 7 car, 5 DNFs for wrecks, including today at Indy. Not the day that he wanted, the 4-time Brickyard champion. Just, it sucks. I hated seeing that 84 wrecked yet again. Last but not least, I want to talk about one driver who was kind of under the radar during this race, but had very notable issues, and these issues have a lot of playoff implications. He is only 42 points above the cutoff line after Indy. Let's talk about Ty Gibbs that finished in that 23rd position. He finished the race so poorly because, yet again, there was another engine issue on the number 54. And this isn't new just for Ty Gibbs. Remember, at Pocono, he had engine issues, but for the entire organization, there was engine issues as well for their Xfinity Series team, Chandler Smith and Sheldon Creed. The past few weeks, engine issues have destroyed their good races. Let's take a look back at Chicago. First off, engine change for Sheldon Creed and then John Hunter Nemechek, who was racing in the number 20 that weekend. They had the engine change before the race. Then there was a DNF for an engine issue for Chandler Smith at Chicago. So those were the engine issues there. At Pocono, I already mentioned. Ty Gibbs did not finish that race with engine issues. Then we go to this weekend alone, and let me read this off for you. There was an engine change for Sheldon Creed before the race. There was a DNF for an engine issue for Chandler Smith, did not finish the race. And then, of course, engine issues for Ty Gibbs, was able to finish the race, but not at all where I thought that he could perform this weekend. Clearly, this is not good whatsoever. Luckily, though, for Chandler Smith, he is locked into the Xfinity Series playoffs with 2 wins. Unfortunately, though, for his teammate, they can't have any mistakes. He is plus 69 to the good in the playoff standings, so that's fine. That's okay. That should get him through regardless of other issues. But you don't want to be having issues this close to the playoffs. Looking at the Cup Series for Ty Gibbs, yet again, he has 42 points above that cutoff line, so he should be okay. But yet again, we don't know. We've seen drivers that have had really good standings with, 4 races to go in a regular season, and they lose it all and they miss the playoffs. I would hate for Ty Gibbs to miss it. yet again, quite honestly, he missed it last year by just a few points between him and Bubba Wallace. I'd hate for him to miss it again, but he should be okay if the Joe Gibbs Racing engine department can regroup during this Olympic break. With all of that said and explained, let's go to the race rating. And I'm going to be honest with you, this race frustrated the crap out of me. Just straight up it did. From the TV changes due to breaking news, which again, NASCAR couldn't control, but we were supposed to start the race on NBC. Then we started it on USA. Then we had to go back to NBC. Then to end the race because of breaking news, we had to go to USA. And it was just a nightmare. Again, NASCAR couldn't control it. But that already threw off the vibes. And then we had weird officiating calls, the overtime finishes, it was very frustrating, and it wasn't the return to the Brickyard that I think we were all hoping for, especially following the incredible Xfinity Series race. Yes, the product for the Xfinity Series versus the Cup Series is going to be different, but I was hoping just for that same excitement to carry over with the product, and it really didn't. And I understand, too, with Indy, the ability to pass has never totally been there, so that argument coming up, that's why this race was so awful to people, I don't really buy into that because that's just what's expected with Indy, but it's still frustrating nonetheless. What I don't agree with in the conversation I don't like is people saying we should go back to the Indy road course because we fought for years saying that the Indy road course sucked and that we need to go back to the oval. Then we get the oval and the fans automatically are flip-flopping. My argument is whenever NASCAR goes to a new track layout or a new track with this Gen 7 car, there are going to be a lot of issues to work through. Of course, we've done a lot of testing here, but there's never been a race day situation here with the Gen 7 car. So we're going to have to work through things, and when we go back to the Indy Oval in 2025, which I believe we are going to, hopefully the product is better. But I was very disappointed. There was some redeeming qualities with this, of course, that race towards the end until it was cut off due to that caution for Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. The stage ends were quite exciting. The restarts were pretty chaotic because track position here is everything. Overall, middle of the road race for me. I'm going to give it a 51%, which is just barely above the yellow line, but I want to know what you all think in the comments below. I know this was a longer episode than usual, so I apologize, but there was a lot to break down with the return to the Brickyard. For more NASCAR news, of course, make sure to go to TobyChristieCom as news breaks during the race week. And then, of course, visit Above the Yellow Line for your ATYL merch to learn more about us and what we do, as well as to find more creative NASCAR content. This week, we're going live on a Wednesday night, changing it from Thursday to Wednesday, so make sure to mark your calendars. We're going to talk about the Indy Oval some more. Also going to preview some storylines that could develop during those 2 off weeks for the Olympic break. So we'll talk about how that's going to work with our channel as well then, as we might take some time off too. But thank you all so much for watching this episode of Above the Yellow Line. Make sure to follow us all on social media. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see ya. Bye.